Hello, my name is Amanda. I'm an alcoholic. My sobriety date's January 20th, 2011, and my home group is A Vision for You. We meet on Tuesday nights at a new location, Manna Executive Place behind Harris Teeter on Rayford Road in Fayetteville. It's not that far. I think some of you guys have been to our previous location. We were kind of packed in there like sardines, so that's a good problem to have, that the group's grown enough and attracted enough people that we need a bigger space. So it's pretty cool to see that happen. It happened pretty quick, and I believe it's because we have home group members that listen to you guys. We like to be copycats. My sponsor's always saying, you know, primary purpose does this and primary purpose does that. And so thank you guys for being an example. And I mean that. I truly mean that. We do replicate what a lot of you guys do, and it's good to have that example. And I got sober in Fayetteville at a Central group, finally located at Alco Club, and was around to get to know Tommy and Wallace, and come here a few times, and I'm grateful for them. You know, we had our own giant at Central group called Mr. John, and he ran with Tom and Wallace, and they're all three, left a legacy, I think, for all of us to follow. So I'm grateful to be here with you guys on your home group's anniversary, and I think I know Daniel my whole sobriety as well. He was always been here, and so yeah, it's good to be in Southern Pines. You know, I hope that I'm going to get drunk and identify. I hope I don't spend too much time doing that. I feel that I'm free today, and I want to be able to share how that happened through God, really, and what that journey looked like over the past few years. And what really being a member of Alcoholics Anonymous means to me today. I took my, first of all, I'll say I was born restless, irritable, and discontented. I think I came out with a spiritual malady. I don't really know why, but I moved a few years ago, and I was cleaning out some keepsakes out of my parents' house, and they, of course, had these like letters, from when I was little. And I'd written the Tooth Fairy, and I was bargaining for like $1 and the 25 cents in the note. It's like, "Dear Tooth Fairy, can you give me $1 this time?" And that's just the kind of kid I was, like never satisfied. And this is before I ever took a drink, And on in there's another note where I had like, I'm also very, type A, egocentric, meticulous. So I like ran away one time, and the runaway note's like, "I'm going to be at the park. I'm going to come home for meals. I got my homework with me. I got my lunch tickets. I'll come home to eat, and I'll see you tomorrow." So something was just off with me from the get-go, and I'm not going to, there's nothing in my family that I could point at. A lot of times I hear other people's stories and, trauma and alcoholism and addiction in their homes. That's just not my story, man. I had a loving mother and father, younger brother, they were married 56 years. There's nothing I could point at to my childhood, to my environment. I was raised right from wrong, everything. And I turned out to be an alcoholic, just like everybody else, And so, I took my first drink, ended up in Fayetteville. My dad was an Army officer, and took my first drink. There was alcohol in the house, and when I took the first drink, it was just out of curiosity, I think, at the time, and I drank enough to where it created an effect. I didn't black out, I didn't throw up, I didn't drink at all, but I drank enough where I felt the effect produced by alcohol, and the mental obsession was on right away. I couldn't wait to do it again. As soon as my parents would leave me home alone again, I would sneak some more. I'd go to my friend's house, and I'd sneak from them, and just every chance I could. I didn't become a daily drinker. I was maybe, 12 or 13, so I couldn't go to the store and get it at the time. I was a very opportunistic drinker, right? Any chance I could, and I would coordinate these like campouts and backyards and tell everybody to bring a bottle from their parents' house. And I remember going on field trips in junior high and emptying out little shampoo bottles in my toiletry kit and putting some booze in there and sneaking it on the bus. And I just fell in love with it right away. And part of growing up, I definitely had a sense of entitlement, and a lot of that was just very ego-driven. A lot of stuff that happened growing up. We would be. I lived on Fort Bragg, and Dad being an Army officer, our neighbors were like the commanding general's son, and we'd be out on the golf course on Fort Bragg where they'd have like beer beer machines, kind of like Coca-Cola machines, and we would just be out there drinking beers, and the MPs would come along and check all of our IDs and walk the other way. And that told me that I'm special and I'm above authority. And that really followed me, and there was, this common thread throughout my story of this. I'm an exception to the rule. The rules don't apply to me. I'm smarter than everybody else. I'm going to get out of this. And that really just manifested itself at a very young age from the very beginning. Even trying to bargain with the tooth fairy, right? Like I deserve more than what you're giving me. And so you put alcohol on top of that. I mean, it just was a recipe for disaster. So on into school, I was taught to go, it was embedded in me that I was going to go to college. I was really good at school. I was did well academically. I was in youth group. I had a very positive experience with God and church as a child. Went off to church camp, and I was real active in the diocese youth groups and activities. And I was in Girl Scouts. I mean, you name it, I did it. Sports, I was athletic. I played softball, soccer, whatever. And the older I got, and the more important alcohol got in my life, it became paramount to anything, to where if it interfered with my drinking, it was out of my life. And so these like childhood friends and neighborhood friends and church friends and soccer friends and Girl Scout friends and all these positive friends in my life, just as the years went on, just started disappearing, and my world just got really, really small, to where the only people who I hung out with were people that drank like I did. And on into high school, so a lot of my story has a lot to do with getting in trouble with the law. If you're an alcoholic and got away with a clean criminal record, like, congratulations. I just never was that good at that. I got caught a lot, and I don't know if it's because I just was sloppy or what, but I did. I got caught all the time, and so that's a big part of my story. So I was like a junior in high school, and I got caught with weed on the front lawn in school, and caught criminal charges, got expelled from school, and I'm in teen court, I'm on teen probation, and I mean, my family is mortified. I mean, they're like, they're members of the community. Here I am, catching charges. I'm supposed to be college bound and star soccer player, and they just don't know what to do with me. They're at this point, they're just like, they sent me to a child psychologist. And they just were dumbfounded, what to do with me. And back then they sent kids to Massey Hill. That's where they sent the bad kids. And now it's like a regular high school, which I find pretty funny. So here I am, expelled with a bunch of other people just like me. A bunch of other kids that like to drink like I do, and cut up and not do, not follow the rules. And I thrived there. Guess what I did? I made new connections. It was wonderful. And they didn't even offer some of the classes I was in. I was taking some foreign languages and some AP classes. They didn't offer this school. Guess what they did? They gave me an A for that semester, and then just let me back into regular high school. So here I am again, thinking I'm special, thinking I'm above the rules, getting away with whatever. And no, to me, like, I'm just sitting here with criminal charges as a juvenile. And to me, it's just not a big deal. This is cool. And I got this sense of like that getting in trouble was cool. And what I mean by that is, like, so I went off to the school, and I met people there that had drugs and were connected and could buy me alcohol. And so when I went back to the regular school, I'm the life of the party. Now everybody wants to call me, hang out with me after school. I'm the one that can get them the drugs and the alcohol, and we can go party in the field. And it made me feel important. And that's really what the thing was. It really just fed my ego, and it made me feel important, and I felt special, that I'm the person everyone's calling to be the life of the party. And so on in, I managed to graduate high school, and my senior year was good. Soccer team went to states. So, it was inconsequential at the time, but again, I would skip school, and instead of going to detention, the principal's like, no, you go on to soccer practice, So here I am, with this ego and thinking that it's all right and I'm above the rules, and I go off to college, and it was just a whole different ballgame. Like, no one cared who I was. I'm at this huge public school, and I'm a little fish in a big pond, and they kind of expect you to go to class, and they kind of expect you to write papers, and I'm sitting there in the dorm room smoking blunts with the football players, listening to Wu-Tang Clan and playing PlayStation all day, and and I'm thinking I'm going to get away with this, right? And real quickly, I'm academically ineligible, and my poor parents, man, at this point, I think I was in year 2 and I moved off campus and they're paying for my apartment, and, they don't even know I flunked out, because the school doesn't share the grades with them. I'm selling drugs, I think I'm just hot stuff. And really at that point, I'm not going to sit here and tell you it won't never fun. I mean, I'm at the prime, man. I'm like 20, 21. It was fun. Despite the consequences. Like, I wasn't looking at the fact I'd flunked out of school and blew my parents' savings that they had saved for tuition and lied to them and gotten criminal charges, in high school and all this stuff. I'm walking in the bars on Franklin Street, and I walk in and everyone's flocking to me and money's flying and lights are going and the music's going unta, 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 and I'm just like, that stuff feeds my soul. I thrived just as much off of that as I did the drinking. I loved it. I love that attention. I love that. Come to my house, after party, here's throwing stuff on the table, beers and booze is flying. And I lived off of that. And that was more important than getting a degree, at the time. And it was still working for me. I wouldn't have told you I had a problem. I was living my best life. And despite flunking out of college. And then the Chapel police kicked my door in, and I caught 4 felonies. But it wasn't my fault. I looked at that warrant, 2 people snitched on me. It's not my fault. People are being confidential informants, right? And so I'm, blaming everybody else. And I did what I always did. I thought I'd get out of it. I hired a lawyer. Forgive me, my parents hired a lawyer. And got the best lawyer in Orange County. And I did end up with some legal consequences. 10 days in jail, 30 days house arrest, and 3 years probation. So I do that, and I do the house arrest. So I got a house arrest bracelet on my ankle, and I thought it'd be a good idea if I start working at a club in Greensboro. So I figured I probably shouldn't sell drugs anymore because that kind of got me in trouble. So I'm going to go work at a club where there's that loud music and the bright lights and the bass and the money flying and the alcohol flowing. And I would go work there during the day, and as long as I was home by curfew, the probation officer in Orange County didn't really care what I was doing. And I got my first DUI while I was on house arrest, driving from Greensboro back to Chapel Hill on I-40. But it wasn't my fault. I wasn't drunk. I was probably speeding. And I just got really bad luck at this point. I keep getting in trouble. The cops are picking on me. I could not connect the dots. The alcohol was still a good solution. It was still working for me. And the state of North Carolina doesn't like you to, catch additional charges while you're already in trouble. So now I've really dug myself in a hole, and I'm on intense probation. I moved to Greensboro, continue to work at these clubs. I'm club hopping. At this point was where I first got introduced to any kind of recovery. That probation officer was kind of cramping my style with some breathalyzers and some drug tests, and I just never passed him, and he thought it'd be a good idea if I go to intensive outpatient at Walker Treatment Center in Asheboro, North Carolina. So I went to my first outpatient, and you know what I did in there? I sat in the front row, and I raised my hand, and I told that counselor how to do their job. That's kind of the person I was. I was trying to get A+ at outpatient, and I was like probably 22 at the time, and I couldn't identify with anyone, and there were people in there older than me, and they talked about how they were doing, little did I know it was literally like going to be my story, but at the time I was just, nope, that's not like me. I'm in college. Like in my mind I had this delusion that I was still this college student. Never mind I'd flunked out and had, been a year or two since I'd been in class, but in my mind, I'm come from a good family. I'm a college student. I'm not like you guys. Never mind that I was working at a club, racking up DUIs, had a house arrest bracelet on my ankle, was on intense probation, and starting to do a lot of drugs. But I couldn't see that. I went to those groups, and I would go to AA meetings and other meetings, and I get my paper signed, and I would meet people at the meetings and go get drunk with them afterwards. I mean, total disregard for anything that was going on. Ended up in shortly after that, I finished that program, couldn't comply again with the probation. I ended up in Davidson Alcoholic Treatment Center. That was my first treatment experience. That was a 28-day program. It's interesting, back in the day they used to be 28 days. I don't hear that anymore. like Sandra Bullock movie 28 Days. I mean, that was like what the treatments used to be. I don't know, now they seem to be a little longer, but like day 29, a friend picked me up and I was like right back at it. And my poor parents, man, I think they thought treatment was going to cure me. Like they had never experienced me going to treatment. I might have thought it was going to cure me too. I thought I'd just sit in there and mess around and eat the food and watch the Father Bill tapes and have a good time, which is kind of what I did. And then I was right back at it. Just kind of. Now they did take us to AA meetings, and I'm fairly positive they do. They introduced us to AA and probably heard the same good stuff that I heard now. My heart just wasn't ready to receive the message. It just wasn't done. And I was back in court and shortly after that stint in treatment. And so throughout this whole time, I've got all these outside forces, all this human aid, right? This human aid is trying to get me sober. And it's just not working. Plus, I just wasn't ready. The alcohol was still working for me. I was not beaten into submission yet. I was still enjoying it. It's still working. I was back in court that fall, and then I saw what I do. I hired a lawyer, right, for my probation violation, and I thought they were just going to extend my community service because that's what they had been doing, and keep me on probation a little longer. I didn't think it was that big of a deal. I saw the probation officer and the lawyer talking in the courtroom, and I'm feeling pretty good and thinking I'm going to get out of this again. And I go in front of the judge, and the judge says, "Sentence activated," and slam that gavel down. And that next day, I was at 1034 Bragg Street at a maximum security prison doing my time on those 4 felonies, which I thought just wasn't going to happen. I thought I was going to outsmart everybody. I thought I was going to outsmart the drug counselors and the probation officers and the judges. And I wish I could say I went to prison and everything changed. But that's not what happened. I went to prison and I maxed out my sentence like a good alcoholic knucklehead. I don't know how that happens, but I did. There is jail inside the prison. If you get written up in prison, you get sent to segregation. And I basically stayed in segregation. I spent some time in single cell. I mean, I was acting up in prison, like I was sober. Like I didn't at the beginning. I sought out some means to kind of catch a buzz at the beginning, but then I kind of, it just was kind of hard and just kind of quit seeking that out. So I was dry a little bit, but I was still behaving like a lunatic, breaking the rules and thinking the rules didn't apply to me. I thought I was smarter than the warden of the prison. Like that's the kind of attitude I had. That's how big my ego was. I think I'm smarter than the warden. And so luckily there was AA behind the walls, and I went to those meetings. And part of me went because I wanted to get out the quad at night, and the other part of me went because I was kind of interested in what you guys had to say. I was in there long enough to realize that being there wasn't fun, and that probably had a problem with alcohol, but maybe just wanted to learn how to drink successfully without going back to prison. So I was kind of on the fence, and really I just wanted to get out the quad at night and see my friends and drink coffee and come hang out with you guys for an hour. It's better than just sitting around the dorms. And I did get a sponsor who worked through step 3 with me. I don't know I can't even recall what it was out of. I do remember opening a book and doing some kind of step work. And so, when you get ready to get released from prison, when I was in there, I would call home at night and, my mom would tell me she was glad I was in prison because she wasn't worried about me. That's kind of a hard thing to hear when you're locked up in prison. Your parents are happy you're there because they know where you're at and they're not worrying about you, dead in a ditch somewhere. So, they kept commissary on my books. I was comfy, I had my $40 a week draw and had my cigarettes and, thinking it was kind of not like a joke, but looking back, that was kind of how I treated it. It was kind of like a getaway camp. I was removed from the lifestyle. At that point, the lifestyle had gotten to where, it was kind of rough to where it was kind of getting old, but I wasn't done with it just yet. So anyway, I get released from prison at 9 a.m. in Raleigh, and had enough, I guess, AA in me that they said I should probably go to a meeting, and I went to Central Group by the new meeting that day. And I'm quite proud of myself. I'm going to this meeting every day. I just got out of prison. I'm doing the right thing. I'm sitting in this chair, and I'd be there every day at noon, every day at noon, every day at noon. And I was just in my mind, I was working a program. I literally, if you put me to a lie detector test, I would have said, I'm working a program because I'm going to meetings. And that's just where I was, and I met somebody at that meeting. Well, the other 23 hours of my day, I was going around my old high school friends, because I haven't been in Fayetteville in a few years. I've been in Greensboro and in Raleigh in the prison, and so I'm back in my hometown, so I want to hang out with my old friends from high school, and they're playing spades and, smoking and drinking around the card table, and I'm sitting there with my water and a cigarette, and then going to my meeting, and then leaving and going back to their house, and that lasted about 70 days. I think I picked up a 90-day chip at the time, but I think I started drinking before then. It was, I was lying. Anyway, I met somebody in that meeting and took them hostage, and in a motorcycle and sidecar. We rode off to New York City, and held them hostage in New York City for about a year and a half, and we kind of held each other hostage, but it really wasn't even a geographic cure. It was just kind of something fun to do, and had an opportunity to go up there, and I did, and it was just silly because it was just more expensive drinking up there. I mean, it was a bad move, really. And I worked at clubs up there, and I was making good money, and literally the next day, the clubs up there stayed open until 4 a.m., and the next day, all the empties from the beer bottles up there, you can go to the grocery store and put the beer bottles in at the grocery store, and they'd actually pay you cash for them. So, by the end of the next day, before I'm going into work again that night, we're going to the grocery store putting these empty bottles in to get cash to buy like ramen noodles. And I was making like, $200-300 in tips the night before, but I'm supporting two people's drinking habits. So by the next day, it was gone, and we're feeding ourselves off of empties and ramen noodles. We weren't even really eating anyway, so it didn't matter, but we ate sometimes. But anyway, so even after that, come back to North Carolina, and about 8 years passed, and what happened in those 8 years was incomprehensible demoralization. I violated myself, I violated my family, got to the point with my family where, I had an everything must go sale. Every time I went there, something walked out with me, golf clubs, lawnmower, jewelry, ATM, and to where my parents were just kind of like, you can't cut, they still love me now. They were my biggest enabler. They loved the heck out of me, but they wanted me to love me not at their house because things kept coming up missing. And what ended up happening is, and I would waver around from job to job sometimes. Like, to me, controlling and enjoying my drinking was if I could hold a job at a restaurant for maybe 6 months. That was successful. And then one night I would get just good and drunk, and I couldn't tell you what night that would be or what night that would happen, and I just wouldn't show up to work and blow all my money and be gone for a week, and then live like that for a while. And that just became normal. Like, my alcoholic life became the only normal one. It was perfectly normal. Everyone I knew lived like that too, and I did stay. I wasn't homeless. I know for sure I definitely would be homeless if my parents didn't pay my rent, and they didn't pay me. They paid the landlord. They got smart on that. And literally, and I would have been homeless if they hadn't, put me up in an apartment. And I had a roommate. And towards the end of my drinking, so I would, like I said, I liked the club lifestyle. I was sociable and let to go out to the bars and stuff. But then as my drinking progressed, then I found myself, especially, there's another kind of, real ego-feeding proposition. After I got released from prison, I would go hang out off Murkison Road. And for those of you who aren't from Fayetteville, it's probably like the worst street in Fayetteville. You might actually drive down it coming into Fayetteville. And I thought it was really cool because I had gone to prison with some of these ladies now, that they knew me and that I could walk around the bad parts of town, and they called me White Chocolate, and they thought I was cool, and they let me hang out at the bootlegger's house and pour like dollar shots of scotch and brandy and Richard's vodka and answer the door, for the all-night liquor store, the bootlegger, and I thought this was cool. Like, this was such an ego-feeding proposition. And the insanity of the fact, like, I was at one of these houses and we thought the police were breaking the door in, but it was getting robbed, and I got held at gunpoint. And then I went back the next day, like, without thought, and this is the insanity of the alcoholism I was living. And so I went from that, and then I started getting put out of those places. And it's bad. When you're getting put out of trap houses on Murkison Road, you're in a bad spot. You're not doing well, okay? Because it's hard to get kicked out of those places. And so what happened was I was just alone. I was dangerously and disgustingly antisocial. That's like one of my favorite, like, if I can describe my, my spiritual bankruptcy is that I was disgustingly and dangerously antisocial. I was alone in the bathroom of this apartment that my parents paid for, putting on my dirtiest pair of clean jeans and doing, just leaving. I shared this in a meeting the other night. I was alone because I got to where, like, I didn't even want to spend money. Like, if I had money to spend, it wanted me to put alcohol in my body. Like, I'm not sharing with anyone. And it was just greed driven, really, and just to the point I was ashamed and just alone. And I was in the bathroom where I spent a lot of time. I was in the bathroom because I didn't want my roommate knowing what I was doing. For sure, they knew what I was doing, right? But I'm thinking I'm being slick, hiding in the bathroom. And a voice clear as day said, pick up the phone and go to AA. And for the first time, I was out of answers. I couldn't manipulate. I couldn't figure out. I couldn't throw money at it. Couldn't out-talk it. And I listened. I listened to that voice. And this wasn't, I believe with every fiber of my being that I was prayed into these rooms. I think we all are. And I know my mom was praying for me. I know her friends were praying for me. And it didn't happen right away, right? I needed the 15 years and every drop I put in my body to get to that point of complete submission, to be ready to do this thing. And I picked up the phone and called an old family friend and said, are you still, going to AA? And they said, yeah. And I said, can you give me a ride? And they said, sure, we'll be there tomorrow. And I'm like, crap, I got to go out in public. Thinking, going to AA meeting, I got to get respectable here. And at least took a shower, I think, and spent my last little bit of money. Went down to the store, got another little tall boy ice house, and drank that probably till the next day. And I went sleeping too much. I know I took a shower and put on some clothes, and I just remember being fearful about like going out in public, even though it was an AA meeting. And I went to Central Group, and that was January 20th, 2011, and people surrounded me with love. And I mean, back then they sent around the meeting list that was in print, and all the ladies put their phone numbers on it. And on the way home, the people who gave me a ride said, here's a young lady's number. You should probably give her a call. I think she could help you. And when I got home, I called that number. That was the second suggestion I took. And that young lady stopped what she was doing and came to my door and to the apartments I was living in. And we talked outside on the picnic table, and she shared with me about her drinking and what her life looked like today. And she had been sober, I think, about 2 years. And, I thought I had to pack my bags. I thought I was ready to go to detox or treatment. That's what I'd done before. And she was like, why don't you try working the 12 steps? And I was like, okay. I hadn't tried that before. And she also gave me some other simple instructions. I mean, the state I was in, I probably should have gone to a detox. I didn't, though. She said, I should probably go to sleep. I hadn't slept in a few days, and that she would take me to a meeting tomorrow. And come to find out, she was on a date. She left a date to come 12-step me. And I'm forever grateful for that. And that just was an immediate example of what Alcoholics Anonymous is. Unfortunately, she's not sober today. But that doesn't matter. God was working in her life at that moment and came to my door. And here I am 12 and a half years later. So, and I always pray for her. I always keep wanting to see her in the room. So hopefully that'll happen. But, and from there, I instantly got busy. I got busy down there at Central Group. Luckily, it was a clubhouse. They smoked in there and smoked a lot of cigarettes and went to a lot of meetings and met with my sponsor and went through the big book. And the journey to that first step was interesting because I didn't think I was an alcoholic. I thought I had a problem with drugs. And I just didn't know what alcoholic was. Obviously, I had a lot of evidence showing I was an alcoholic. I had about 3 DUIs and there's plenty of evidence showing me I was an alcoholic, but when I really read about that phenomenon of craving and the mental obsession and how I'm powerless over that first drink, it really made a lot of sense. And I mean, you could have connected me to a lie detector and I would have said, I'm only going to go have 2. It was a magic number. I'm only going to go have 2, and I meant it with every fiber of my being, and I could never do it, and when I read Doctor's Opinion, it explained a lot about that. And not just being powerless over alcohol, but even if I'm removed from alcohol physically, that insanity of that first drink of why do I pick it up? Like knowing what had happened and thinking that it's going to be different this time, or even just picking up a first drink in light of what's happened. And I remember reading the second step, my first pass, and like, man, that came to believe. I would have had a whiteboard doing tenses. Came to believe, come to believe, came to believe, did believe, didn't believe. I mean, I was just complicating the mess out of it, and really, I didn't realize it at the time, but that had already been manifested in my life, man. I'd already been in the rooms. I'd heard you guys talk about the power working in your life, and I was still there, and I hadn't taken a drink. But at the time, I didn't know that. And, I really like in the book where it talks about circumstances made us willing to believe. Man, I didn't believe in a power because I was virtuous or was a saint or had some special powers. I had to believe in a power because it's like all I had. It's the only choice I had. And I was that, desperate to do that. And when we read We Agnostics, I'm like, man, I believe, like, I started going back to church that first week I got sober. And I'm like, what do you mean this chapter has nothing to do with me? And my sponsor's like, well, if you knew how to apply prayer to staying sober, you probably would have done that, And so I had to learn how to apply this power to helping me not drink, and then later on to help me do some other things. And I remember there was a newcomers meeting we had on Friday and Saturday nights, and that was the only meeting my sponsor told me I could share at. And so, of course, I went to it because I want to share, I want to talk. And so I went and they were saying the third step prayer, and like everyone at the time who had any kind of time in that room was like saying it all together, and I thought that was really impressive. So like we'll go home and started reading the prayer out the book, even though I probably wasn't even there yet in the book, and I would just read it, and I really didn't have any idea what it meant. But over time, it started clicking, and of course, throughout the journey of recovery, like different things mean things at different times, and in early recovery, it was all just kind of a first pass, right? Getting through these steps, and then, what that looks like now to me, it's like that last part of that third step where it says, this is just a decision unless at once followed by a strenuous effort to face and be rid of the things that are blocking us. And I can't, I have to remember that. Like, I made a decision. I hired a nutrition coach. I'm like, logging macros, and you guys got these desserts out here, man. If I make a decision to eat that dessert, guess what? That decision doesn't mean much. Like, I have to follow with that action. And luckily, I started putting pen to paper and doing an inventory. But I was a little confused. I think my sponsor had done it out at the 12 and 12, and the guidance I was getting on it. I'm not blaming her or anything. It just was somehow I ended up with some worksheets, and I'm just making check boxes and just really kind of confused. And I went to this old timer, Donnie. You guys might know Donnie. He's no longer with us either. But Donnie showed me the example in the big book and said, just here, follow it. And I'm like, hey, okay. So I did that to the best of my ability at the time. And, I've redone the 4 steps. So I'm on 4 sponsor in my recovery, and everyone's like been given to me right at the moment I needed them. My second sponsor I got when I was coming up on my first year, and I put my hands on my roommate, and I told her, and she's like, well, your big book looks real good. It's all highlighted and marked up, and you got all these notes, and she slammed it shut, and she's like, but you don't know how to apply this to your life. And so my second sponsor, I say, raised me, like I had her year 2 through 7 or whatever. She really just kind of showed me how to live this life or whatever. But the sponsor I have now, I went through the 4-step with kind of recently. It's probably my second or third or 4-step in the time I've been sober, and just really, showing a light on all the parts in the 4-step that it's just really, a lot of praying. There's a lot of praying in there that I missed, and I had a lot of, not a lot. There was some stuff I needed to write down and look at in my life, in sobriety, and I was able to do that with a new perspective and some new guidance, and being able to incorporate more prayer in that 4-step, which was good. And then really the part at the end of the 4-step where it asked about making ideals, and it's talking about sex life ideals, relationship life ideals, but really applying that to other areas of my life and molding these ideals and then praying for guidance on that. And that's really been kind of this new perspective that I've gotten on the 4th and 5th step this time around. But the first time, man, I just had to do it. If you're new, man, just do it. You're not gonna mess it up. Just get through it the best you can. Ask your sponsor to help you with it if you need to. And I pushed through it. And then with my 5th step, of course I wrote down everything under the sun. It took a couple of hours, drinking coffee, smoking a bunch of cigarettes, and I went out. and sat for an hour being quiet. And it was around Christmas time, and I'm downtown Fayetteville, and the church bells are ringing, and I'm waiting for this burning bush moment. And there really not much happened, but what did happen was that at that point in my recovery, I just kind of started to get back into the professional. I got back into school. That school I'd flunked out of, they admitted me back, and I was looking for some internships. And the part in the book where it says, our fears fell from us and we could walk with a new confidence, like that started manifesting in my life, living day to day, and that was pretty cool. What that looks like today in my life is that I meet with my sponsor regularly, and I share everything with them. And I feel like I've had periods of time in sobriety where I've always been current with a sponsor, but not that thorough and current. And I'll tell you, it makes a really big difference. And to me, that's that spiritual principle, that fifth step, is being, entirely honest with another human being about what's going on in my life. Because, you stay sober long enough, you think you got answers, and you start thinking you can run your own life and not bouncing stuff off of people. And I really appreciate that time and that feedback, and I need it. And really, what this sponsor has taught me is how to pray with somebody. And that's the best gift you can give somebody. It really is. Like, I've been sponsoring women for years and years and years, and I'm not saying I was doing it wrong or different. There's no guidebook, right? But the power of praying with somebody and showing someone how to pray is the best gift I've gotten these past few years working with the sponsor. And I'm able to do that with the ladies I work with. And it's a gift, it really is. And so, going through 6 and 7, the first pass was very confusing. I read Drop the Rock, I read the 12 and 12, I read everything. We had diagrams with trees, with branches that said character defects, and other branches that's just shortcomings, and roots that said something else, I don't know, sins. I mean, it was ridiculous. And what that looks like to me today is like, good news, it's not that complicated. My sponsor told me that if Bill wanted more in there about 6 and 7, he probably would have written more. And that it literally is what it says, that you're willing to, for these defects, that he said I should be sufficiently horrified by my fifth step that I'm willing to have these character defects removed. And then I say the prayer, and that I believe in the power is going to remove them, just like the obsession to drink was removed. And that's it. Like, don't get me wrong, like Drop the Rock's good, 12 and 12's good, read it. I'm not saying don't, teach their own. I read them. But, like most things, I complicated it. And really it was putting this, and the book talks about it, it's like there's the power of God and the belief in the power of God. And there's big differences, and I've really seen that manifest in my own journey. I'd always prayed, and then being able to like meditate. Man, I'm a runner. I was talking to a fellow runner before this meeting, and I was a runner, and I'd run every morning, and that was my meditation. And I meditated, guys. I just ran and meditated because I'm special and unique, and I can't sit still. And these are things I told myself, and again, it wasn't wrong. Like, that's what I needed at the time. Like, that was sufficient. But today, what that looks like is, man, I take a good chunk of my morning, and I'm actually like quiet, and I have this quiet time, and that's where I'm asking for strength and direction from this power that I now have this better belief in to tell me what to do. And what that's saying is, I'm open for business. When that newcomer calls or when something calls and it's always inconvenient, man. I'd rather sit at home and watch Netflix on my gym jams and eat pizza, man. I don't want to go out in the middle of the night to pick up somebody, or go to the detox every Saturday, or to go to the jail every Wednesday, or to come up here on a Thursday and drive out to Southern Pines. I mean, service is always, is never convenient. It just never is, And what I can say about that, though, is it's like, man, since day one, I was like 2 weeks sober going to the detox. I didn't share anything, but I went. And the ability to see people change and grow is an experience you must not miss. And some of the most spiritual moments of my journey have been, in the jailhouse saying the Lord's Prayer with inmates, and that's really what I needed that week. Is just, no matter what happened in the middle of the meeting, at the end of it, we're saying the Lord's Prayer in a jailhouse, and I'm able to walk out. That's powerful. and being involved in service, has on different levels. I mean, and I remember a time I was speaking at Central Group, probably maybe doing a workshop on service, no doubt. And he said, cheering at your home group and stuff like that's important. Like that's part of being a home group. He's like, that's a good start. It's not. It talks about intensive work with other alcoholics, and that's what I've got this gift, and it's what I'm supposed to be doing. And I've had a lot of different experiences with that, and Alcoholics Anonymous has given me the ability to be an aunt today and a daughter. I always thought I didn't do too much harm to my younger brother. He went to NC State in Raleigh, and we were kind of separated in age. Now, never mind I used to drive him to school smoking weed and stuff, and turn him on to his first drink, and I didn't do any harm to him, in my mind. And when we were looking at amends, it was pointed out, like, man. There are times, like when he was a freshman at NC State, I was in at 1034 Bragg Street in prison. When his friend said, how's your sister doing? You think he said, oh, she's in prison? No, he lied. He was ashamed. He brought home who's now his wife for Thanksgiving. I got sober in January, and that Thanksgiving, I'm like knotted out in the turkey, and he's bringing home his future wife to meet the family, and here I am just a hot mess, and so I had to make amends for that. And today they've got 2 little boys that are my nephews, and I was like, both of their godparents. Like, that's what Alcoholics Anonymous has given me. Alcoholics Anonymous has given me the ability to be a member of my community, to be a daughter, to be a friend, to be an aunt. I'm free, man. I could be anything. I'm a marathon runner. I'm a triathlete. I'm a tennis player. I mean, it's whatever, man. I'm free. I'm free to do whatever I want to today. And that's what Alcoholics Anonymous has given me, is freedom. And more so, God's given me that freedom. I had a good run in Alcoholics Anonymous. My first 10 years, it was like a wishing well. It was. Everything was hunky-dory. I got the job, got the degrees, got the life, got everything going on. And then almost 2 years ago, in 4 days, it'll be 2 years, I got a phone call. My dad and my mom were out in Tulsa visiting my relatives, and I got a phone call from my dad, and he said my mom had been hit by a car and died. And my world crumbled. It was super, just shock, trauma, and I was so plugged into AA that I didn't even have to go to AA. AA had come to me, like, it was on a Saturday morning. I got the call, traumatized, calling neighbors and the priest and whatever. And an hour or two later, an AA member called and asked me about the bookstore, because I was, we had just opened up a bookstore in our area for literature, and they called and asked me something about this bookstore, and I just broke down and told them what happened, and within like 30 minutes I had people at my house praying with me, my old sponsors that had moved away to New York City and to Dunn, and they just descended upon my house, and I was just wrapped in love. And not even in those immediate moments, like those immediate moments after that were a blur, but I was so wrapped in God's love and love of Alcoholics Anonymous. My buddy, picked me up. I couldn't drive, and I found comfort in going to meetings, it just was a comforting spot. And my buddy would pick me up every night that week, and there's no questions, just take me to the meeting, and wrap me in love. And really what that looked like afterwards was that what the years and years and years of practicing these principles is that being angry at the driver who struck my mother never crossed my mind. I felt compassion and been praying for them, and first thing I thought was they were probably drunk, but they weren't. It was just a freak accident. They didn't get charged with anything, and a friend of mine told me that day, they said that's the worst day of their life too. And like, you guys gave me that ability to have that perspective, and there's been, through such a tragic time, there's been a lot of peace about it, and I just can't, the 10 and a half years I had with my mom sober, I mean, God, what a gift, you know what I'm saying? And I got that from you guys, and being able to be there for my family and not be the person running off being drunk, and honestly, I mean, there were times where, I don't know if you know this with your family, sometimes you can laugh about the drunk times and stuff, and I always would joke, anything pre-2011, I trust their version, and anything post-2011, I have my own version. And so, there was a time where one of the neighborhood kids died from an overdose, and we were reading the obituary and saying how sad it was, and noticed they didn't really put the cause of death in there, and just casually as you could, my mom's just like, yeah, we often wondered what we'd put in your obituary, and it's like, the gift of being the gift that she didn't have to bury me, and the gift of B, that I was like able to get through that, and the thought to drink didn't cross my mind. It's like, that's freedom, and if you don't, fail to perfect and enlarge your spiritual life, you won't survive the certain trials and low spots ahead. Certain trials and low spots ahead. You stay sober long enough, bad stuff's going to happen, but you don't have to drink over it for sure. And that if you're, embedded in service and wrapped in the arms of Alcoholics Anonymous, you definitely don't have to go through it alone. And that was just a real gift. And to be honest, like the past 2 years, I feel like I've grown more spiritually than I did in the first 10. But I could be normal too with different people's experiences. But instead of driving me, into a negative place, it drove me into a more positive place. And that's really because of you guys. And the gratitude I have for Alcoholics Anonymous is beyond measure. And, I'd say that extends to all of our families, and our friends and our prospective occupations, homes, and affairs. We practice these principles. And that's what I try to do today. A is a lifeboat, not a houseboat. It was a houseboat for a while. The first few months I lived in these rooms, but I'm glad that I have the ability to practice these principles into the world and to continue to grow spiritually. And thanks for letting me share tonight, and thanks for having me, and congrats on your anniversary, and thanks.